Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma rabbi zidni ilma. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Ameen. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. This is an example question of improper fractions of case 2. An important advice: be soft. Before splitting this fraction into partial fractions, we need to observe three things. Number one, type of fraction. Number two, denominator. And number three, types of factors. For type of fraction, we need to observe the highest powers of variable both in numerator and denominator. Since the highest power of variables both in numerator and denominator are same, therefore this fraction is improper. Now observe the denominator. This denominator can be factorized. So we need to factorize it. Denominator is not in its simplified form. We have to factorize the denominator. So we have x cube minus 1 in numerator. By taking x square common from denominator, we have x square times x plus 1. Now the denominator is in its simplified form. Now we have to observe the types of factors. So we have two types of factors: repeated linear and linear. Now we can split this fraction in partial fractions. Since this is an improper fraction, so we have to start partial fraction with a constant. So a plus. Now we have to make two fractions for repeated linear factor and one fraction for linear factor. X and x square. We write repeated linear factor twice, once with power 1 and once with power 2. Since all these factors are linear, so we need to write constants in their numerators and call it equation 1. Now we need values of x for substitution. So from this factor we are getting x0, and from this factor we are getting x minus 1. We find value of this constant by comparing the coefficient method. Now we have three more unknown constants. So we have got two values. We need one extra value for the remaining constant from these constants. So we can suppose x1. We will find values of these three constants by substitution method. Now we have got three values. Now eliminate this fraction and these fractions from this equation. For that you need to multiply both sides with this denominator. So when we will multiply both sides with this denominator, we'll get x cube minus 1 on left hand side, and on right side we have a times x square x plus 1. When we will multiply this with this fraction, we'll get b times x plus 1. And when we will multiply this with this fraction, we'll get c times x plus 1. And finally with d we'll get d times x square. Now let's find the value of this constant by comparing the coefficient method. So we need to multiply these two terms to get the coefficient of x cube on right side. On left side we have 1x cube. Now compare the coefficients of x cube on both sides. So by comparing the coefficients of x cube on both sides, we have got the value of a, which is 1. Now let's substitute these two values randomly, one by one, and we will substitute this value at the end because we suppose this value, and we got these two values directly from the factors. So the order of substitution for these two values is not important. We can substitute any of these values at first. So let x be 0. So when we will substitute x0 into this equation, we'll get -1 on left side. This will become 0. This will also become 0. This will also become 0. So we will get c times 1. So c is -1. Now substitute x minus 1, the next value, this value, into this equation. So we'll get -2 on left side. On right side, this will become 0. When we will put -1 here, this will become 0. This will also become 0. This will also become 0. So we'll get only d. So d is -2. Now let's substitute the last value, which is 1. Always substitute the supposing value at the end to make the calculation simple. So when we will put 1 on left side, we'll get 0. On right side, a is 1. This is also 1, so 2. This will become 2. Then copy b, and when we will put 1 here and here, we'll get 2, so 2b, b times 2 or 2b. c is -1, and when we'll put -1 here and 1 here, we'll get -2. d is -2, and the value of x is 1. So these two will be cancelled. So 2 is equal to 2b, therefore b is 1. So we have got the values of all unknown constants. Now let's substitute all these values of a, b, c and d into equation number 1. This is equation number 1. This is the compulsory step. You have to substitute the values of unknown constants into this equation. So a is 1, b is also 1. 1, 1, c was -1 and d was -2. So this is the required partial fraction of this fraction. I will discuss case 3 of improper fractions in my next lecture, inshallah. Good luck and Allah Hafiz.